Yo, what's going on, guys? This is Anthony with themovieblog.com, and I'm back here with another video. Now, this time I'm back here with my reaction for Avatar: The Way of Water. Now, you guys may have seen my outer theater reaction. It's doing okay. Wanted to see if I could come back and do something that's a little bit more in depth, a little bit more deeper into the story without all of that background noise. Now, I want to get into the movie and talk about my reaction for the film. There's something about the storytelling in this movie that really stands out. Now, the structure of the movie from beginning to end, it's very familiar. It doesn't seem like it's doing something new that you haven't seen in theaters before, but it does feel like it's doing something polished and refined into like the umpteenth level of detail that it can possibly be delivered. It's just a really, really high level of polish. Now, one of the common questions that folks are asking me, or at least I saw in the comments on that first video, was whether or not you should see this movie in 2D or if you should go ahead and see this movie in 3D. Now, do yourself a favor and see this movie in the biggest, loudest theater that you can. I saw this movie in Dolby 3D. I didn't get to see it in IMAX yet. I sat maybe like third or fourth row in the Dolby 3D theater, and I have to say that it was an absolutely amazing experience. There's moments when James Cameron uses the sound in the movie to make the theater rumble. It's like you just, this is like, wow, that's like really, really cool. And you want to experience that in its purest form. You don't want that to be watered down in any way the first time you go and see this movie. Now, I have to admit that the first time I saw the first Avatar, I did see that movie in 2D, and I thought the movie was just, okay. I saw the re-release this past September, and I saw that in 3D, and I thought that was okay too, but this is extremely different. The visuals of Avatar: The Way of Water are extremely sharp. Now, some of you eagle-eyed viewers, you guys that are paying way too close attention are going to notice the differences between the CGI graphics in some scenes, as if shots were worked on by different visual effects studios. But for the most part, everything looks the same level of crispness. Now, those little moments, it goes from Halo to Gears of War. You know what I mean if you get the video game reference. There's just a slight difference, but still a high level of detail. Now, one thing that I noticed in Avatar: The Way of Water is that the action picks up almost immediately, and we're thrust into those scenes where you see that action that I'm talking about. There's some scenes where I just kept thinking to myself, like, I must be watching this. This must be what PS5 looks like on an 8K TV, or like a really high-end PC on the super max settings of all the graphics on an 8K monitor. These scenes will straight up make you feel like you're watching something out of a Call of Duty game. But that also goes to show you the level of detail that's used in this movie. The Call of Duty games are made by video game developers who live, breathe, sleep, eat Army combat all day, all night. That's what they do. And James Cameron is delivering something on par with what they do, which is a huge compliment to the visuals and the action sequences in this movie. Absolutely. See this movie in 3D. See this in the biggest, loudest theater that you can. And make sure that you do everything that you possibly can to get the full sensory effect that this movie is trying to deliver to you. The next question I get asked is, should I see this in IMAX or Dolby 3D? Now, like I mentioned earlier, when I saw this movie, I saw it in a Dolby 3D theater, and I sat maybe third or fourth row, and I have to say that was a thrilling experience. That was really, really fun. When the helicopter rotors are playing through the speakers, it was almost like you could feel the vibrations in the floor, and these moments are like the ones that you want to feel in that sense. These are the ones that you can tell that James Cameron is using the sound in the movie as if it's a prop in his storytelling, and you want that full effect. I know IMAX theaters, they have a standard that they set with regard to how sound has to perform in their theater. So I imagine the experience in that setting will be enjoyable as well. IMAX theaters tend to be larger, and they deliver really good sound but I don't know how that compares to being in the Dolby sound experience, which is almost like sitting next to a giant speaker in a concert without the deafening music or the headache after. I mean, I can only specifically comment on my experience, which was in the Dolby 3D setting in a smaller theater, but I really, really think that was a great way to experience the movie. Now, another cool question that comes my way, or at least I've seen in the comments of the first video, is the story better than the first one? So now, I don't want to spoil, excuse me, I'm sorry, I hungry. I don't want to spoil anything about the story because I really want you guys to experience the movie as I did without any of the movie being spoiled for you, so that you can truly enjoy the storytelling without knowing what will happen. That being said, I do think this is the best sequel I've seen in a long time. Sequels have the burden of honoring the expectations of the film that came before them, and The Way of Water is following in the footsteps of the highest earning film of all time. The Way of Water does spend a decent amount of time of, let's say, honoring the original Avatar film when you sit down. You get in the theater, you get reintroduced to Pandora. There's a good amount of homage that's paid when we're brought back into the world of Pandora, and we're reintroduced to the familiar faces after being away from them, and so much time has passed since the first film. But Avatar: The Way of Water doesn't dwell in the past. It takes time to honor the past, but then it picks up and thrusts you forward into the future, and we start learning about how this movie earns its subtitle, The Way of Water. Now, the original Avatar, that one introduced us to Pandora's jungles and forests and tribes, but The Way of Water teaches us more about the groups of Na'vi who are the water tribes of the planet of Pandora. Yeah, there's water tribes. Let that sink in. Another difference is with the relationships between Jake Sully and the Na'vi. Now, in the first film, Jake Sully was an outsider. He was not being accepted. He was learning the culture. He was getting acclimated to things. This one, he's in. He's all the way in. He's embedded in the culture. And whereas that film was more like, culture shock and boy meets girl, this is more of a story that's wrapped in a coming of age story, right? This is a coming of age story wrapped in a war. And I think the story is really, really cool with lots of layers. Again, these are familiar aspects of storytelling. These are things that we've seen in stories before, but just really polished in a really high quality way. Now, let's talk a little bit about the villain of Pandora. Now, I'll say that I do have mixed feelings on the villain of the movie. I do. I got a little bit of mixed feelings. Now, I think people already know that Stephen Lang came back for Avatar 2, and he's just as ferocious as he was in the first movie. He's back in this one, and I think the way he comes back is a little convenient. Now, I know that villains are not easy. I don't make films. I critique them. This stuff looks hard. But let's just say, there's a reason that almost every Batman movie features the Joker, right? And that's because villains are just not easy to get right in a movie like this. Avatar 2 does some interesting things to make this work with the character, but it does feel a little forced when the movie explains how he's returning after dying at the end of the first movie. Part of me wishes that they could have just made a new villain that was just as awesome as Quaritch in the first one, rather than bringing him back. Like, really, you really could have brought in a new villain and just tried to make it work. And I have to give some credit to movies like Wakanda Forever and director Ryan Coogler for delivering two strong villains in each of his Black Panther movies. I appreciate the uniqueness and tone based on that alone. It's not to say that Avatar 2 feels like Avatar 1 because of the villain, but there is a sense of familiarity when you're bringing back a character that we all became so familiar with after watching the first movie a few times. That being said, after they explain how Miles Quaritch returns, he's just as exhilarating as he was in the first movie. I love that Quaritch is that complex, calculating, and vicious villain that goes through a lot of change and a lot of growth in this film. James Cameron legitimately spends time into developing this character's arc and giving him a nice story to tell. It's a feat in itself, considering just how many new concepts and characters are introduced in this movie. Now, James Cameron does a great job in balancing that development between our protagonists and our antagonists to keep things feeling fresh. He's just putting on a masterclass, again, of bringing back familiar elements that we've seen in a lot of action movies over the years and just giving them that high level of polish that makes this one stand out. Let's also talk a little bit about those new characters. There are a lot of new characters, like a lot of new characters. Sigourney Weaver returns in this movie, but she's playing an entirely new character in this film than she did in the first film. I won't say anything about her character, nothing at all. I want you guys to experience that for yourself in the theaters, but she is an amazingly interesting new character. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll definitely want to talk more about Sigourney Weaver's character after you guys have seen the movie. But overall, the new characters are really interesting. With our first experience of the water tribes of Pandora, something that I love about this movie is that they, despite the completely foreign culture and species of the Na'vi to the humans, there's still a lot of commonalities that make it relatable to viewers. There's teenage angst, self-discovery, self-acceptance of one's identity. There are rivalries with peers and youthful moments all throughout the movie in full effect. Avatar: The Way of Water is a story about fathers and sons coming of age, but mostly about the sons seeking their own identities in the shadows of their fathers. Now, there are some things that I didn't really fully like in Avatar 2, but I won't go too deeply into that. I'll save that for the full-on review. But there are a lot of characters that get introduced in this movie that I want to see more of. Or there are characters that were central figures in the first movie that have a smaller presence in this movie, and that's a bit disappointing. I'm torn between how much to reveal without spoiling anything big in the movie. So tell you what, if you guys want me to go into more detail, let me know in the comments and I'll share there so we don't spoil the movie for everyone before it's released. The only other negative thing I think I can say about Avatar 2 is that the movie is a little long. I know, that sounds crazy in a movie that you don't ever want to see end, but hear me out. There were times when Avatar 2 felt like it could have ended, and it just didn't. It was like James Cameron was just sticking his head out on the side of the screen saying, just 15 more minutes, and I'm going to show you something awesome. And you believe him because he's like that car salesman that just sounds believable, and you know he's going to show you something awesome, and he's going to deliver. But it's like, all right, I got stuff to do, but let's do this. I love that the movie is giving me a complete and satisfied feeling when I leave the theater, but man, you need to make sure that you use the bathroom before you sit down. Don't be that person. Don't be that person that gets up and ruins it for everyone when you need to make your way to the bathroom halfway through the movie. Do not be that person. Overall, this is the film to beat. This movie is giving all the feelings of excitement like it's starting a revolution, like it's coming from Marvel. Like it's coming for Star Wars, like it's coming for DC. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Disney add some more Pandora stuff in their theme parks because of this. This is going to be the best film. This is going to be in the best film of the year conversations easily. This is almost a perfect film. Some better editing, some more screen time for more characters in Pandora would have helped balance things out. But overall, this is almost a perfect movie. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. Tell you what, if you guys like this video, you want to see more, you want to have some more conversation about Avatar and Pandora, do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. I know most of you guys aren't subscribed. Come on, do me a favor. I need you guys to subscribe. Otherwise, I'm going to have to check you guys later. Peace.